What is practice-based research? What's practice-led research? Are they the same thing? Can you give me your vision of what this kind of research looks, feels, sounds like, please?
So practice-based research, I suppose, grounded in practice, obviously. So the idea, it's got relationships to other action-based research methods, those kinds of ethnographic methods, but it's to do fundamentally with an individual's own practice, which is true of all research, I guess, but that drives the inquiry. The difference between perhaps practice-based and practice-led is still contentious. In fact, the term practice research is now increasingly used because of the confusion between these different areas. Practice-based tends to frame when somebody is reflecting upon their own practice. So it's that model whereby you produce something, you create something like an exegesis, which is a reflection, a written reflection on the work that you're making as you do it, and then there's iterations as that happens. So that's kind of classic definition of practice-based. And then practice-led is more of an applied form of research. So you would apply, say, your practice as a photographer or a filmmaker or a documentary maker to a subject that perhaps you wouldn't have selected yourself, but perhaps you're working in a team. So you would go and, let's say you're looking at malaria in South America or Zika or something, you would use your skills as a documentary maker to bring that to a research question, which is quite a long way from what practice is about for you, but it might also contain useful information as you move ahead about how you might make that kind of documentary.
Okay, and then in your own work, so you've produced a lot of practice research, whether it's practice-based or led. I won't define it that way, but practice research. How do you go about that process of, documenting for the external audience? The distinction between it being, how do you document the fact that it is research rather than just that you've done a thing that's practice and it's out there?
I think, this is where a lot of the confusion lies for people who don't do practice-based research or know about it. That's something in the journal that we're addressing, which is the idea of documentation and the role of documentation, because the research, as in all research, really, it's process-led. It's not about artifacts. So, I think there's often a confusion. You'll hear people talk about practice-based and the artifact as the output, as if it's the only carrier of knowledge. I think, it's not. It's a process which you need to document as you move forward. It might be that you'll have a final documentary, but it might be that in a piece of research you only present fragments of a documentary. It's still the research. So the documentation is a kind of critical in respect to, say, for example, in practice-based, you might be documenting the technical setup, how you put together shots, who you're working with, field notes, that kind of thing. Documentation in a more practice-led would have more of an emphasis, I guess, on collecting the material, the documentation material. So it might be the stuff that does exist in the film, but also used as stills, etc.
Okay. And final question is...
And sticking with this documentary theme, hopefully it's useful.
Yeah, and the final question is a bit of a departure, but we'll be sharing this, your insights with a large group of educational researchers on an EdDoc programme. Could you imagine teaching practice being articulated in this way, so that because our researchers are all working with students, they're working between the kind of fault lines, if you like, between their own educational practice, as in teaching, and research. Could it be the same kind of configuration of these spaces, or is this really something that's in the domain more of creative arts practice?
I think within the domain of creative arts practice, there are specific readings of that kind of research. And in fact, I kind of really specialise in artistic research, which again has got another set of definitions altogether. But the kind of general idea of practice-based applies to nursing as much as it does to some extent engineering, but also to teaching. So I think if it's your practice, then and you're focusing on that. And I think this is it's a philosophical question of where you place yourself in relationship to the knowledge you're producing. If you're inside it or outside of it, you still have to find a way of being objective about how you develop that knowledge. So I think, it's entirely appropriate for teaching. It's just how you work out that method of being objective, critically, aware of what factors might be shaping or distorting the research in any way, and able to address those and any ethical issues that come out of them. So in that respect, it's similar to all other research.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for your time. Enjoy your trip to Cornwall. Your jumper is befitting of the occasion.
Suitably Nordic.
Yeah. Thank you very much. See ya.
Okay.
Bye.